Hey everybody. In this next video, we're going to be covering the spikes mechanic and how to create a death action for your character. So this is pretty easy, and we'll be building off pretty much what we did in the last video where we worked on player kind of movement. So I will share my screen and we will get started. So as you can see, I've got my character from last time. I have him in the scene in level 1, and the objective here is to take our spikes and make them deadly for our character. So we'll create a sense of challenge and an obstacle for our character to avoid. So the first thing we're going to want to do is select our character, and we want to create a death sequence. So if a character runs into the spikes, or maybe an enemy later down the road, or maybe a swinging buzzsaw, and we want the character to instantly kind of die and reset the level, we want to set that up. And we're going to set that up in the player controller script. So again, I want to select my character. I can do that either in my scene view up here or in my hierarchy. So if I just select my character, I'm going to go to my script graph. And this is what we worked on last video. So I'm going to open this up full screen, and I'm just going to zoom in kind of to the right of jump. You can put this wherever you want. I'm going to right click and type in custom event. And I just want to create a custom event. And this custom event is going to be called death with a capital D. From this custom event, when it happens, what we want to do is pull up our scene manager. And we're going to load a scene. And we're just going to use the scene name. So remember, our scenes are essentially like our levels. So in this case, we're in scene 1, which is level 1. And our scene name, what we're going to do is whenever our character dies, we're going to reload the same scene that we are already in. So instead of calling a specific scene name, what we're going to do is type in scene and get name. And then the name that we are going to get is actually going to be the active scene. So I'm going to type in scene manager and get active scene. And so this should work for our death sequence. So whenever we trigger this custom event, which is called death, whenever we trigger it, whether from the player character or from the spikes or something else, we're going to load our scene, load the scene of the current active scene that we're in. So we're essentially restarting the scene whenever this happens. Now I'm going to section this off. We'll call it death. And now I'm going to close out of my script graph. And I'm going to select my spikes down here in my scene view. And I can just confirm that they're selected by looking at my hierarchy. And I do see that my spikes are selected. And so you'll see that I still have the script graph for my character or my player open. What I'm going to want to do with my spikes selected, I'm going to hit add component. And since I already have script open from the last time, I'm just going to select a script machine. I'm going to create a new script machine. So I'm going to hit this new button. And we'll just call this spikes. I'm going to store this in my macros with the rest of my script graphs. I'm going to call this spikes. And there we go. So I now have this kind of script graph here with a on start and on update. Now I don't need these functions for my spikes. So I'm just going to select them and delete them. And what I want is to check for an on collision enter. And remember, we need to make this 2D because we're making a 2D game. There we go. So I'm going to check for an on collision enter. So this is attached to our spikes. So I'm going to be really checking to see what my collider is. Now, the first thing is we'll take this kind of through line and we'll trigger this with an if statement. So if we collide with something, we're going to trigger a custom event. So I'm just going to type in custom event, and this is trigger. This is the only option that's available. And we're going to trigger the death event. So this is just saying when something is colliding with these spikes or something is colliding with whatever object this is, in this case, the spikes, if it is true that something's colliding, we'll trigger the death. Now, you'll notice that this if statement is not working right now. It's yellow or orange. And if we look at this kind of error, we'll say condition is missing. So we need a condition. So what is it that we're checking for? So I'm going to choose my condition. I'm going to drop it down. I'm going to type in game object and compare tag. And what I'm going to be doing is looking for an object with a tag called player. I'm going to type in player. And this works just like our layers from the last video, except in this case, we're just using the tag. So we're looking for any object that's colliding with the spikes that has a tag of player. And so this is going to be our collider. And if this object is colliding with our spikes, then we want to trigger the death event. Now we need to trigger this event, and this is going to be triggered by, or this object that's going to be affected by the death event is going to be this trigger right here, which is also the object we're colliding with, which is the game object with the tag of player. This can be a little bit confusing and kind of like a little bit roundabout, it might feel, but that's all we need to do for this. So I'll close out of here. If I hit play, well, actually, let me check my player. I'll click on him. All right. My player does have the player tag, so I should be good. So let's play this and see if it works. Okay, my player can move, I can run, I can jump, and when I drop down on the spikes, the level restarts. Perfect. That's exactly how they should work. So this is a lot quicker than the last video, but it can still be tricky. So just be careful and make sure you're spelling everything properly. Good luck.